in physiology every single day. But there's one specific enemy we face across all departments, an enemy that's fast, ruthless, and honestly often completely invisible until it's almost too late. I'm talking, of course, about sepsis. So today we're holding this clinical huddle to completely realign our approach. We're going to distill the 2021 Surviving Sepsis Campaign guidelines into a practical, actionable explainer, and we are calling this new protocol Fight Sepsis with Kindness.
Okay, so here's our itinerary for this huddle. First, redefining sepsis simply. Then, we'll look at the friendly fire effect, spotting the invisible enemy, the first hour bundle, what we intentionally leave out, and finally, fighting sepsis with kindness. Let's get right to it.
Starting things off with Section 1, Redefining Sepsis Simply. For a really long time, the medical community was honestly a bit muddy on what the enemy actually was. We relied heavily on those old SIRS criteria, and we'd throw around terms like severe sepsis. Well, it's time to scrub those from our daily vocabulary. Instead, we need to look at the official Sepsis 3 definition published back in 2016, which absolutely remains our gold standard today. It states, sepsis is defined as life-threatening organ dysfunction caused by a dysregulated host response to infection. Notice what's completely missing there? The term severe sepsis is gone. Because by this definition, all sepsis is severe. It's inherently life-threatening.
Now, the absolute key phrase in that Sepsis 3 definition is dysregulated host response. To put it in plain English for our huddle today, the real danger to our patients isn't actually just the invading pathogen itself. It's the body's catastrophic overreaction to it. The immune system basically hits the panic button and starts launching artillery at everything. This results in massive immunological friendly fire that actively destroys the patient's own healthy organs.
That brings us to Section 2, the friendly fire effect.
Let's actually break down how this friendly fire cascades through the body. Step 1. The initial infection triggers an alarm. Pathogen molecules, or PAMPs, you can think of them as the bacteria's unique fingerprints, bind to toll-like receptors, which are essentially our body's cellular fingerprint scanners. Then comes Step 2, the cytokine storm. The body releases a massive wave of pro-inflammatory cytokines like TNF-alpha and IL-6. Just picture these as chemical alarm bells ringing completely out of control. Step 3. All this massive inflammation causes endothelial dysfunction. The blood vessels literally become leaky. Fluid shifts right out of the vascular space, causing severe tissue edema and hypoperfusion. And finally, Step 4. Because the tissues are starved of oxygen and oxygen delivery is completely disrupted, the organs begin to fail.
When you look at the typical disease progression, it beautifully illustrates the two-faced nature of sepsis. First, you get this incredibly steep early peak. That is your hyperinflammatory response, this cytokine storm we just talked about. But look at what happens next. The patient's immune system dives into a deep valley. That is immunoparalysis. The immune system literally exhausts itself. T cells die off, and the patient becomes incredibly vulnerable to secondary nosocomial infections or viral reactivations. As clinicians, we have to treat the patient through both of these terrifying extremes.
Moving right along to Section 3, Spotting the Invisible Enemy.
So how do we catch this rapid deterioration before our patient just falls off a cliff? We rely on two phenomenal tools in our arsenal, and they complement each other perfectly. First is lactate. Lactate tells us about tissue perfusion. If the lactate is rising, it means the patient's tissues are suffocating and switching over to anaerobic metabolism. It's a massive alarm bell for microcirculatory failure. Second, we have procalcitonin, or PCT. Unlike a generic inflammatory marker like CRP, PCT is highly specific for bacterial infections. It helps us confirm the bacterial threat and, crucially, it guides us on exactly when we can safely stop antibiotics later on.
So the crucial point here is knowing our thresholds. A lactate level greater than 2 millimoles per liter is a giant red flag. Under the current criteria, if your patient has an infection, requires vasopressors to maintain their blood pressure, and has a lactate over 2 despite us giving them fluids, they have crossed the threshold. They are officially in septic shock, and their mortality risk just skyrocketed.
All right, Section 4, the first hour bundle.
The absolute second we identify that red flag, the clock starts. And I don't mean the let's wait and see clock. The 2021 Surviving Sepsis Campaign guidelines are extremely clear on this, and this is our battle plan team. At minute 0, draw 2 sets of blood cultures. We absolutely need to identify the bug. However, do not delay antibiotics for more than 45 minutes trying to get a tricky culture. Within the first hour, we must hang broad-spectrum IV antibiotics.
Every single hour of delay directly increases mortality. Next, within the first 3 hours, we administer 30 milliliters per kilogram of balanced crystalloid fluids for hypotension or a high lactate. And if they're still hypotensive after those fluids, we don't wait around. We step in with vasopressors immediately. Norepinephrine is our first-line agent.
I want you to write this hemodynamic goal on the back of your hand. Target NAP greater than or equal to 65 millimeters of mercury. Maintaining that mean arterial pressure is absolutely non-negotiable. If we drop below 65, we aren't perfusing the kidneys, we aren't perfusing the liver, and we are quite simply losing the battle for the patient's organs.
Section 5. What we leave out.
A massive part of being a highly effective clinician isn't just knowing what to do, it's knowing exactly what not to do. Medicine is full of outdated traditions, and intentional omission is a core pillar of clinical kindness. First up, when giving fluids, do use balanced crystalloids, like lactated ringers. But do not use hydroxyethyl starches. The data on this is crystal clear. Starches carry an unacceptable risk of causing acute kidney injury in septic patients. Harming the kidneys when the patient is already fighting for their life is the complete opposite of clinical kindness.
Next, the great steroid debate. Do use IV hydrocortisone, usually about 200 milligrams a day, but only for adults with refractory septic shock who have an ongoing requirement for vasopressors. Do not use random cortisol levels or ACTH stimulation testing to try and guide whether or not to start steroids. The guidelines specifically recommend against it. Doing so just delays care and confuses the clinical picture. Finally, despite some really interesting experimental theories out there about sweeping up the cytokine storm, the current guidelines are firm. Do not routinely use IV immunoglobulins or blood purification techniques. In standard sepsis cases, the trials have just shown no proven mortality benefit. We stick rigidly to the evidence to protect our patients from unnecessary, invasive, and unproven interventions.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 6, Fighting Sepsis with Kindness.
Transforming all these dense scientific guidelines into our daily practice really means asking ourselves, how do we actually fight sepsis with kindness? Well, clinical kindness means we act with ferocious speed in that first hour to save their organs. But kindness also means gentle, precise de-escalation once the initial storm passes. We use daily procalcitonin levels to smartly narrow and stop broad-spectrum antibiotics, protecting the patient's microbiome. We avoid drowning them in endless fluids once their tank is full, preventing dangerous fluid overload. And above all, we do no harm by intentionally leaving out outdated, disproven treatments.
So I'll leave you with this question for your very next shift. We have the guidelines, we know the science, and we clearly understand the friendly fire effect. But how will you change your bedside manner today to implement this first-hour bundle with precision, urgency, and true clinical kindness? Sepsis is absolutely ruthless, team. But together, our structured, evidence-based compassion can be stronger.